Have you heard of this show called The Loud House? It is a series where a middle child, Lincoln Loud, has to survive a family with 10 sisters. Yeah, that show. Well, what if I told you that I found an unreleased dark episode? Well, it happened to me a few days before writing this. It's a bit of a long story. I was surfing through the web when I came across this website of salvage media known as Digital Fossils. It was a website that carried strange, lost pieces of media that were either phone calls, security footage, images, deleted scenes of movies, etc. I had an interest for strange, lost pieces of media, so I was curious enough to check out this website. The links were ordered as fossil, and then followed by an uppercase word or short phrase with a few numbers. Those words or phrases were sometimes nonsensical and unrelated to the whole website entry, and sometimes they made sense. For example, fossil dog 807, fossil help 9482, and fossil don't look 370. Some of the entries on the websites were slightly disturbing. For an example, a recording of a cat playing a dead bird, or a news report of a child going missing on an abandoned playground. I don't know what the website recovered these pieces of lost media, but I had almost everything it had to get its hands on. However, I stayed silent about that. It didn't work on the website anyway. However, as I scrolled down after seeing some entries, I found something that caught my eye. Fossil Loud 11. This was rather interesting. It had a word that reminded me of the ones from earlier that were randomized, but it had 11 after it. It reminded me of Lincoln Loud, the same 11-year-old boy from the show I just talked about earlier. I clicked on the link and saw the description of the entry. The description said about the following. This is a lost episode of The Loud House which is titled Enough is Enough. It was meant to be a finale of the third season, but scrapped after its production was done. Chris will be planning another season 3 finale at the moment. However, this replacement is reasonable. This episode was lost for being too disturbing and dark for the series. If you're a fan of The Loud House, we must tell you that this is no joke. Viewer discretion as advised. I was curious. I wondered why would this be for a show like The Loud House to have such an episode like this. So after I downloaded it, I started the episode. When the episode started, the usual intro played. Nothing was wrong so far. However, at the end, nobody went on the couch to watch TV. It didn't act like they were there as well. Also, Lily's poo-poo wasn't present. Another thing that was wrong was that the ending logo was tainted with the color of pastel red instead of orange. The website was not joking around. There was definitely something wrong with this episode. The title card had a background with the white fog flowing across the left of it, with the center text saying, "Enough is enough." At the bottom, bubbles that below showed who made the episode as well, which was the same as the first 2 seasons. The music was low, rumbling noise that was a little ambient, but something you may have heard in a horror game. The episode started out with the outside view of the house as it sometimes did. The music was absent, like the beginning of Brawl in the Family. It cut to Lincoln watching television, instead of playing video games like he usually does. He was just chilling. "Don't you hate living with 10 sisters? Well, I sometimes do," he said, his smile turned upside down. "But on a rare few occasions, I go a little too far. I wish I could say they would just leave me alone, but I can't hurt them. They're my siblings. I want to love them, but there are things they do are setbacks for me." Lincoln here sounded a little more serious than normal. "Hey, bro," Luann said, as she appeared next to Lincoln at the next shot. "What did the platypus say before leaving its bar? Put it on my bill." Lincoln frowned and she laughed. "Yes, Luann, pretty fun. Do you want to smell my flower?" "I'm not falling for—" Luann's flower sprayed water on Lincoln's face before he could finish what he was saying. "Okay, Luann, do you want to hear some of my banana cream pie?" Luann said before slamming it into Lincoln's face. I wondered why the episode said this episode was too dark. Luann was making many jokes, and I thought this episode was more stupid than graphic. Lincoln facepalmed in dissatisfaction. "Stop, Luann, you're not funny." "What do you call a boy who's completely white?" "A flower boy." Luann laughed a bit. But one shot later, Lincoln slid his hand off his face, revealing his angry eyes. "Enough Is enough, Lincoln said furiously as he grabbed Luann by their shoulders. Wow, nice grip, bro. Your shoulder worked out the gym. Ha ha. Luann laughed at her little joke. Then something happened. It took a back of the shot of Lincoln as he felt as he was hit by a train. Just after Luann laughed at her little joke, Lincoln slammed her head against the wall, bruising her and knocking her out. A low-ebb tune began to play in the background. Lincoln gasped and stared at the crack in Luann's head, and then at her purple, bruised, unconscious body. He looked at his hands in fear. What have I done? I've never done anything like it before. He then looked back at Luann. But this made me feel so alive. For some reason, I never felt this good in a while. I just know what I have to do. It cut back for 3 seconds, transitioning Lori texting on her phone, possibly to Bobby. Hey Lori, can you drive me to the comic book store? Just do it yourself or get your mom, Lincoln. Lori left the room, which I assumed was to use the bathroom. Lincoln looked at her phone, which she left inside, glaring as he panned to the next wipeout. A next shot later, Lori was seen walking in her room when, Lincoln, let go of my phone right now. Lori was shot in the head, by her head of the phone, as it broke in shattering glass. Lincoln walked over to her body and looked down at her. This is for smashing my VR console, teenage brat, Lincoln said with the silent anger, as it cut to Lori's lifeless body. Her phone was shattered with bits of glass scattered across her face, being cut from across places. She was bleeding across her face where she was cut. I was shocked to see the middle child go on such a killing spree like this. Why was this made? I thought to myself. It cut to black yet again, changed to a different scene, taking place in the backyard. Hey Lincoln, wanna wrestle? Sure, why not, Lynn? I'll beat this time. I knew this was going to be no wrestling match, but I kept watching to see where this would go. As Lincoln was wrestling with Lynn, he got behind her, and shortly after, he cut up a close-up of Lynn's face. Come at me, bro! Lynn's anticipation was cut short when she not only widened her eyes, but gagged. I knew something went wrong. The dark tune grew louder. It cut away from the close-up of now Lincoln choking his 13-year-old sister from behind. Not only that, but the animation quality had changed to a very style similar to that of King of the Hill. It looked like a shocking that it didn't look as cartoony as before. I watched as Lynn gripped her brother's hands and to break free. It was useless for her to escape. It cut back to Lynn's point of view as she was turned around, face to face with Lincoln. This is when I felt like I was going to faint. Lincoln's face looked menacing, cold and possessed at this point. His eyes were bloodshot and his pupils were larger and his skin was a tad bit darker. The animation at this point just went back to normal style, but his face was still highly detailed. Lincoln's pupils was a reflection of his choking sister Lynn. I watched back as her vision went blurry and her eyelids opened and closed. The time that she had her eyes shut, she was done. It felt like it was over for her and her music stopped. The next shot went to Lincoln sitting in the dark with Lynn's body next to him. A different low tune played. Lincoln looked at his sibling's body with a displeasure look on his face. After 30 seconds he spoke. Sleep tight, Lynn. You're free. I got chills after he said those words. Lincoln snapped as he was no longer the man with the plan. He was now a corrupt soul. I wonder who's next for the axe. He wondered to himself as he looked up. With a planning smile, his thoughts came. The video suddenly turned black and white. Lincoln pulled Lenny closer to him with a pair of scissors in hand, and glared at Lola with the bat in his hand. He was then smashing Luna's guitar on her face, and was about to set Lucy on fire. It cut to black afterwards. A line of white text uppercase spelling 1 week later faded after 5 seconds. It was clear that 1 week had passed, and it was nighttime again, where the text black on screen faded out. Lincoln was staring at the bodies of his now dead sisters, which were under his bed. To name a few of Fate's, Lily choked on what I assumed was a small toy, and Lola was cut in the face multiple times. I'm not going to get to the rest of the sisters, though. My job is done. All I need is one more. But who is it? He asked, looking around. Yes, it must be me. There's something I must do, Lincoln said as he looked down, as then it cut to black for 10 seconds. Lincoln can now be seen hanging from the ceiling, his back turned against the camera. I felt bewildered. All the Loud siblings are dead, all because Lincoln had snapped, and all that built up to this moment. Lincoln had planned to kill himself in order to join his sisters. Well, not all of the sisters. Just for a silent 12 seconds, Luann slowly got out of Lincoln's bed and panted heavily. It was a relief that she didn't die. Like I said way earlier, she was knocked out, not dead. Her wounds were still present, but she was a bit pale, and a bit of blood dripped down her face, but not entirely. She looked at Lincoln and back to her sisters, which were now lifeless corpses. This is no joke, Luann said softly as she witnessed her mass murder. She stood for a few moments before limping outside, possibly to tell the parents what happened. Afterwards, the camera slowly panned towards Lincoln's hanging body. It faded to black, indicating the end of the episode. The credits had an eerie ebbing tune, and the background was the same as the white fog from the title black background moving to left, but it lasted a little longer. As the credits stopped, the screen went black, and an echoing high tune ran for about 12 seconds, as it gave me the willies. Afterwards, the episode was finally over. Questions still ran through my head. Why was this made? What happened that led to Chris Savino, the creator of this last show, make this? The episode had something to do with it? I just knew I had to. I tried doing some research on this certain episode, but nothing I found on this specific episode. I went to bed after spending 25 minutes of useless research, because no other website had anything of this episode. I still had some nightmares about that episode. Lincoln standing there cold, angry, with bloodshot eyes and over-detailed face. He did nothing. He just watched me as I slept. I always turn my lights on after those nightmares happened. I don't want him strangling me, slamming me against the wall. Whatever he'd do could end my life. I didn't go back to digital fossils for a week after that episode. That didn't mean I was done with it, though. I just hoped that I would someday find out some info about this episode. Like who suggested the idea for this episode? However, there was a real question. How did they get away with making such an abysmal episode?